Hello, Dean Schwimmer here. Welcome to today's vlog. A short item, then on to the main subject, which actually was supposed to be yesterday's main subject, but yesterday's vlog was getting a little long there, so I didn't want to put this item in there and make it any longer. But first, just this little short item here. You've been watching Joe Biden. I've been talking about this for the past couple of vlogs, maybe some vlogs before, that the DNC and the media, the Democrats, are trying to prop up Joe Biden. I've been talking about his cognitive problems, and you've noticed, or may have noticed, Bernie Sanders noticed this. He talked about it the other day. I just saw him in an interview today, the tape, talking about Joe Biden, the shortness of his appearances. He referred to a rally where Joe Biden spoke for all of 7 minutes, and Bernie Sanders said, when I speak for 45 minutes. What can you really cover in 7 minutes? They've been keeping his appearances brief, but there is also another matter, because despite what polls say, polls are, well, they were wrong last time, remember, in 2016, but also polls will sample, say, 1,000 people deciding or stating which candidate they prefer, but obviously you're not going to elect somebody with a sample of 1,000 people, even if they all go out and vote and only part of them vote for the candidate. The name of the game is turnout. I'm going to show you a video here. I'm going to, well, I'll start with that. I'll just give you the tweet from a gentleman named Scotty McGuire in Michigan. That's one of the primary states today, one of the states that are holding primary elections. C-SPAN 2 camera zooms out far enough to show the reality of Joe Biden's true campaign. Detroit, Michigan school gymnasium. The attendance super low, but on top of that, audience talked with each other the whole time that he was giving his speech. I'm going to play the video now. Watch the video. I'll be back.
It's time. It's time. Thank you.
Welcome back, and you just saw it, the sizes of the crowds that Joe Biden is actually attracting, if this video is indicative, is really not that large. Thank goodness for C-SPAN, an objective channel that shows you the reality, so we know exactly what's going on. Now on to the main subject. We're all familiar with Hillary Clinton calling the Republicans or the Trump supporters a basket of deplorables, which probably went a long way to costing her the election. That and promises to put coal miners out of business. That probably didn't help her in certain states. But Democrats are not the only ones. Remember Never Trump? And true confession, I was a Never Trumper. I voted, well, I didn't vote. That's the whole point. I was a Never Trumper. I couldn't bring myself to vote for Hillary Clinton. I did not vote for Donald Trump either. I just stayed home for the first time in my life. If I had to do over now, I would vote for Trump. I am going to vote for him in 2020 because I have been pleasantly surprised with his policies, if not always with his demeanor and his behavior and some of his tweets. But we have these Never Trumpers who are diehard Never Trumpers, who are still opposed to Donald Trump, and they are even willing to vote for the Democrat rather than vote for Donald Trump, which means either Joe Biden or Bernie Sanders. I have read some articles of Never Trumpers agonizing over this decision because they don't want to vote for Bernie Sanders because he's an out-and-out socialist. They don't want to vote for Biden because he's, I just gave you all his faults. Plus, he's also just about as liberal as Sanders is, and he's going to have to be far left, I predict, in order to keep the Bernie Sanders supporters in the fold if Sanders is not the nominee. But the issue I want to get to today about the Never Trumpers is they're as elite as the Democrats are. They are, well, let me give you the headline. Let me give you some quotes and, as usual, my comments. Here's the headline. Never Trump grifters hold, quote, summit on principled conservatism, unquote. A number of America's leading Never Trump luminaries, including Bill Kristol, Evan McMullin, Rick Wilson, Amanda Carpenter, Tom Nichols, and Ramesh Ponnuru, held a conference in Washington, D.C. on Saturday to an audience of about 200 supporters. And I'm wondering how luminous some of these luminaries are, because about half of them I haven't heard of. Time to compete with the Conservative Political Action Conference, CPAC, the, quote, Summit on Principled Conservatism, unquote, was hosted by Principles First in partnership with Stand Up Republic, both of which describe themselves as, quote, grassroots, unquote, organizations. Principles First, founded by, quote, conservative, unquote, consultant Heath Mayo, whom I've never heard of, claims to be an, quote, entirely self-funded volunteer organization, unquote, that is, quote, committed to rediscovering and championing principles in the 21st century, unquote. Sounds impressive. Stand Up Republic is a 501c4 nonprofit organization led by failed 2016 presidential candidate Evan McMullin and his running mate Mindy Finn to take down President Trump. Stand Up Republic is funded by eBay founder and left-wing financier Pierre Omidyar and the Left of Center Hewlett Foundation. The Omidyars have been among the most prolific supporters of left-wing causes for years. And that is one important point to make, that these supposedly principled conservative organizations, they are in bed with the left. They are getting their funding from the left. They are working with the left. They would rather work with the left and elect a left candidate than see Trump reelected. That just shows how committed they are, or how much they hate Donald Trump. But I think what they also hate, and I'm not the first one to point this out, is that they are not, well, they consider themselves thought leaders. They consider themselves the elite, but they're not the elite anymore. Nobody is listening to them. They are being left behind as the train pulls out of the station. They are losing their influence. I'm going to cover this more in a future vlog, I think, but they can't stand it. That's a large part of what's going on, I think. But going back to the quotes here, the Omidyars have been among the most prolific supporters of left-wing causes for years. But they sure, the Never Trumpers, but they sure talk a good game. Both McMullin and Mayo gave lip service to familiar conservative platitudes during their opening remarks at the conference. And here's a tweet from Julie Kelly. She writes for a conservative website called American Greatness. She was at this conference, so here's what she tweeted. After a solemn sermon by Evan McMullin about principles and values and respect for others, Charlie Sykes, another Never Trumper, wonders aloud how the, quote, crazies, unquote, have taken over conservatives, now introducing Kristol, Sharon, and Ponnuru as, quote, thought leaders, unquote. But as I just said, I don't think they're thought leaders anymore, and I think that is one of the things that is really bothering them. A, quote, principles first, unquote, information packet included a list of 15 important principles, quote, to anchor our politics to core values, unquote. Solid conservative principles like, quote, integrity, character, and virtue, unquote. Quote, every person has quality, dignity, and worth, unquote. Quote, truth, honesty, rationality, and facts are non-negotiable, unquote. And, quote, the Constitution and rule of law are paramount, unquote. It all sounds wonderful, but with never Trump conservatives, it's always best to examine what their, quote, principles, unquote, look like in practice. Rick Wilson is known for using degrading language to describe Trump supporters. Other, quote, principled conservatives, unquote, on the panel referred to Trump supporters as, quote, crazies, unquote, I just mentioned Charlie Sykes, and, quote, cultists, unquote. After the presentations, there were question sessions where people in the audience could question people on the panel, but not from everybody. Certain conservatives at that conference, the ones who presumably would ask embarrassing questions, questions were not taken from them, or so it seemed. Sensing that they were being purposefully avoided, Julie Kelly, whom I just mentioned a moment ago, and Will Chamberlain. Will Chamberlain is the editor-in-chief of Human Events. Julie Kelly and Will Chamberlain stood in the back of the room for the entire second panel so they could be first to the microphone for the second round of questions. This time, Chamberlain was able to ask his question. Quote, your fellow panelist has called Trump supporters, quote, 10-toothed rubes, unquote, and has referred to them as being unable to read, unquote, Chamberlain pointed out. Quote, do you think those comments are appropriate, unquote. As you can probably guess, the fellow panelist, I forget which one it was, I think it was Rick Wilson, was unapologetic. That is what never Trumpers, never mind Democrats, that is what the, I guess we could call them the formerly elite of the Republican Party really thinks of you if you are a Trump supporter. Thought you would like to know that, if you didn't already. And finally, I have a little item here I want to end with. That was the main subject. This is just a video that I saw on Twitter. I just had to share this. My advice is think twice before you try this. I don't know about you, but when I saw that, I said, oh my God. The only thing I could add is thumbs up if you like this video. Share it with anybody you think would also like the video. Got any comments? You can put them in the comment section below the video, as well as any questions you might have, suggestions for future topics. You could also subscribe. I love getting new subscribers, so subscribe, 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 and finally come back and see me again. I look forward to seeing all of you again, and until I do see all of you again, bye.